All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Crossing Swords. As always, I'm Andrew.
And I'm very much at risk of repeating myself and sounding like a broken record where we only know one topic. But let's jump into it anyway, because it's always relevant.
Yes, obviously, at the moment, there's been a lot of talk around vaccines and how people stand on them, and we'll get to that in a bit. But this week, we wanted to talk about COVID in general, sort of if our opinions have changed, how we feel towards lockdown and the measures and everything like that, and how we feel about the situation compared to how we did in the beginning. And then we're going to go on to vaccines, our opinion on them, where we stand, and then, see where we go from there. So, Jake, how are you feeling about everything at the moment?
About mixed. I think frustration, more than anything frustration, because look, we've been doing this for, no, I don't mean me and you, I mean the COVID thing's been going on for like 9 months now since they kind of admitted, all right, maybe it's not an Asian thing, maybe it's a world thing. We've gone through the whole lockdown once, we learned all the mistakes, and it's not like they weren't readily available. I mean, there were dozens and dozens and hundreds even of experts and as well as members of the cabinet, members of parliament, backbenchers, sage advisors, all the people, all kind of saying that these are the things we learned. We went in too late. We shouldn't have done it. Maybe, I'm not going to go too much into that because honestly, you can just do a quick Google and find all of the fucking advice you want, right?
Yeah.
But the fact is, we're here 9 months later making all the same mistakes.
Yeah.
It seems like that anyway.
So would you say you're someone who's very much in favour of lockdowns and stricter measures?
Well, I think, to an extent, but I think my biggest, the trouble is I appreciate that's not going to happen now because as has been pointed out many occasions, this government literally built themselves. By this government, I mean Boris's government, particularly given the role he played in the Vote Leave campaign and his advisors. They've literally spent the last 4 years telling everyone to ignore experts, to ignore professional advice. It's all useless. They don't know anything, rubbish them.
Yeah.
And now here they are 4 years later saying, guys, you need to follow the professional advice. Like they're reaping what they've sown. And unfortunately, we're all paying the price.
So you feel where we're failing at the moment is as a general population en masse sort of not following the rules and not being careful. And because of that, we're still sort of suffering.
One of the things that really pissed me off was I've been going for like these little walks. I've been sort of like walking down to the park, walking around the park and walking back home.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly seeing people 2s, 3s up on the pavement, not making any attempt to get in single file to respect social distancing.
Yeah.
But the one that really triggered me was the other day I was walking around the park and there was this group of must have been sort of in their late 40s, early 50s. They were taking up the whole path, spread out a little bit off the path, just the whole path and their whole thing. And one of them was moaning, he's going, the problem is, it's these young people that don't respect the rules. And it's like, you're literally forcing people to break social distancing because you're acting like a selfish cunt. I'm like, I don't. And I think
no, absolutely. I think in general, no one has really changed the way they live, the way they go about their day-to-day life. I mean, even if you just go to a shop, if you watch the way people behave, no one social distances. No one's concerned about giving anyone any space. Everyone's still impatient. I think in general, people are still being incredibly selfish.
Yeah, and I think, do you know what I think my experiences have been, and I don't know how they line up with your own, but my experiences have been, certainly while I've been at work, is that really old people, the kind of retirement age elderly, have a lot more of a respect for it. They're sort of a bit like, well, I'm going to go out, but they really do have a kind of, they respect it. And if you tell them, if you politely remind them, they respect you on it. The younger people are very respectful, generally speaking. If you, as long as you politely remind them, they're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. And they'll do their best to follow the protocols. It's the kind of the middle generation, the kind of, 35 to 50, where they're kind of like, I don't care, you know, why you got, you know, they're the ones that will kick up a fuss. They're the ones that are acting very selfishly and not changing their lives and blaming young people. A lot of them, they're going, oh, it's the young people's fault. And it's like, you literally just walked in here without a mask and brushed up against someone because you refused to wait 2 seconds while they passed you.
See, I think it's. I think you're right in saying that the young people are being blamed. In my experience, I would say all people of all generations, it's very mixed. I tend to find you get one extreme or the other, where you get someone who's really hyper conscious, and you know, if you get anywhere near them, you can see they're like sort of freaking out. Or you get people that, like you say, will pretty much hump your leg just to get to what they're getting to. And I'm not meeting many people in the middle ground. And I'm tending to find it's people of all ages. I get a lot of teenagers at work coming in after school time. 99% of them aren't wearing masks. 99% of them don't socially distance. I'm forever having to tell them,
Yeah,
because we get
fair
quite
enough.
a lot of old customers. They don't keep away from them, and the old people get quite intimidated. They're quite loud, they're quite boisterous, and they get really close. And I have to constantly tell them, like, look, guys, if you're not going to behave, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And then equally, I'm getting a lot of old people who couldn't care less. They're like, fuck it. I think what it probably mainly comes down to is there's still a large proportion of the population that haven't known anyone who suffered from COVID or who has died or anything like
Yeah,
that. And I think because of that, there's
they don't
in
see it as
general an
a
attitude
problem
of,
to
oh, well,
worry
I haven't
about.
got it. I don't know anyone who's got it.
Or
I
they're
don't even
like,
think like
they're
it's a
easy,
fake thing. I just
it's easy
don't
to
think
believe the idea. No, but it's easy to believe the idea that the media are exaggerating it for their own political gain,
that. And
because
I
you're like,
think
well, hang
there's
on a
an
minute, how many people do you know that have got it?
I
And
think
do you
it's
know what I
that,
mean?
and
Like,
I think most people think they're invulnerable until they know someone who suffered.
and I think there is still a huge part of that. I mean, we spoke way back when we first started speaking about the lockdowns and the coronavirus and whatever else. We spoke about it and we said that one of the things that changed for me, because when we did first speak about it, I did downplay it. I'm not going to lie, and I
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, no, I'm on board with that.
But when we did first, I said the switch that happened with me, and I know it happened with you, because you stop thinking about, what if I get it? You think, what if I don't even know I've got it and pass it on to someone who gets it, or passes it on to someone who passes it on to someone
Yeah, it's the
who's
ripple
got an
effect.
underlying health condition, who's old. It's like, I will not be responsible in any way for someone's death. And that
No,
was the thing that
absolutely.
changed from my perspective. And I think too many people are still thinking about if they get it, not if they give it.
I think the longer this goes on, and the more I see people not follow
Yeah, that's
the
the
general
thing. Of course
guidelines
there is.
and things like that, I think the way I sort of land on it is I think it's inconvenience, and people will not be inconvenienced.
Yeah.
And I think we're very belligerent in this country. We don't like the idea of being put out at all. We went through a 3-month lockdown, and I think people just went, "That's it. We've done our part. Going forward, we're going to do what we want." And
Yeah.
I think it's probably as simple as that. Um, but
Yeah, I'll go with that.
I find it really difficult where I land on restrictions and stuff at the moment. I don't know about you, because I've seen the effects it's had on people I know that financially it's crippled them. And then you look at even huge businesses like at time of recording, Debenhams has been wound up, and there's 12,000 jobs on the line. And the Arcadia Group is going down. So that's Top Shop and companies like that. And COVID has had a huge impact, and a large part of that is lockdown and things like that. So I'm very torn on how I feel about it. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I do appreciate it, but I think the thing for me is that I'm thinking about all these people that are suffering as a result of lockdown, both emotionally and financially. And therefore I'm thinking mid-term, not long-term, but mid-term, I'm thinking the last thing I want to be doing is inflicting that on them any longer than is necessary. I
Yeah.
accept that. I think for me, not I accept, for me, it is somewhat inevitable. It has to be done.
Mm.
But what I want to make sure to do is to do it early enough and in the right way, so that, and not undo all the work. That's the big debate about the Christmas thing, and I didn't necessarily want to bring it up because I have already got into arguments with people about this. But the Christmas thing is, we have that break, and what we're doing is, all it means is for all the people that are suffering, both financially and emotionally through lockdowns, we're just suggesting that actually you're going to have to go through another month of this at some point.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, do you know what? For the sake of my Christmas or their mental health and their financial well-being, balls to my Christmas.
No, absolutely. And I think that's why we probably did things at the time we did, or that we've had the length of lockdown that we've had, like you say, is just to save Christmas. I mean, I can't speak to the mental health aspect of it because, in truth, I haven't been locked down at any point.
No.
I've had to self-isolate a couple of times, but to be honest with you, if anything, I enjoyed those occasions. But otherwise, I've still gone about my day-to-day life as normal. I've had to get public transport to work. I work 5 days a week. So I've not been trapped indoors.
Only 5?
Yeah, only 5 days a week. They try and force us to do more, but
They're practically part-time in your industry.
But yeah, so I think I can't comment on that. I think probably part of the problem is if people knew that no matter what, this government was going to look out for them financially and in whatever other way, I think perhaps they'd be more okay with it. But there is no security from this government whatsoever.
And that goes back to the other thing, the fact that we've been through it. We know what was done, we know what was needed, we know what worked, we know what didn't to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So we're in a position now to be going, okay, now we have a better idea of what we need to do to keep people financially secure and to keep their peace of mind so that they can actually respect the rules rather than breaking them because they feel like they need to. But we haven't done that.
No, we haven't. But even, going back to the security aspect, I know for a fact, like, if you are a small business owner, the level of support you get is based off of your income, but the income it's based off of isn't this year, it's not last year, it's the year before. So they're basing what support people and businesses need, and I believe it's the same for the self-employed as well. It's based off of an income pre-COVID. And, for example, if you're a successful small business, that means you're fucked currently.
Also, it means that if you've only set up your business in the last 2 years,
there's nothing to base it off of. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as much as I think Rishi Sunak has tried to do good, there's a lot of areas he's neglected, or Boris or the government in general have neglected people. And I think if people knew they were going to be supported, they'd be far more on board with the measures being taken.
Yeah, and it's the idea that, I understand why and the prep and we need them, whatever, but they're you just look at the in terms of financial support, the fact that they've once again denied a pay rise to the public sector, they've denied a pay rise to teachers, doctors, nurses, and policemen, and at the same time they won't rule out a pay rise for themselves. And you think, I know, as they rightly said, they said that's not up to us, but they do get a vote on it, and you've seen it time and time again. In the Commons, it's empty for a vote on whether we should go to war with, in some tiny little country out in the islands. But as soon as it comes to their pay rise, they're all in.
Everyone turns up. Yeah.
Everyone goes to vote, and it's like, how can you honestly stand there, clap for the NHS and all the frontline workers, deny them a pay rise, and then inevitably, because we know they will, the fact that they're not ruling it out, give yourself a pay rise.
Oh, of course they're going to get a pay rise.
How the hell did you do that? Morally, ethically, haven't you lived with yourself?
I don't know the answer to that question, in all honesty. I really don't. It's just looking out for yourself, isn't it? I think it's as simple as that. But I think we've sort of covered how we're feeling about things at the moment. So obviously one of the subjects I'd like to talk about is vaccinations. There is a lot of vaccination development going on at the moment, discussion, debate, and then it also brings into question the anti-vaxxer movement, So I think just first of all, what do you think about the vaccinations being talked about at the moment?
It's a tough one because obviously they have rushed them through a lot of stages. There's a lot of things they can't have done the research on, longer term effects, things like that, effects with
Yeah.
other illnesses in terms of an ongoing thing, a chronic thing. But obviously, it is required to get somewhat comfortable level of normality.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the main thing is that, and I'm quite pleased to see companies sort of already saying that there's a chance that once the vaccines are rolled out and they're readily available, if you don't take the vaccine, you cannot use our service.
Okay.
Which I'm mixed on. On the one hand, I'm like, no, well done. You have a duty of care to your staff and to the other customers that you work with. But at the same time, it's like, well, this is a rapidly developed vaccine that hasn't been fully tested, just to offer both sides of the coin. How do
No,
you
that's
feel
fair.
about it?
I'm really, in general, I'm for vaccines. On the whole, I don't. There is risk involved with every vaccine. There's always side effects. There's always a risk factor involved. But I think on the whole, they're a positive. Anything that increases people's health and protects them is a positive. With the COVID vaccine, I mean, first of all, there's so many different varieties I didn't quite realise, and that's the same with most vaccines.
Well, here's the thing though,
Um,
this is where it's a very clever vaccine, because what it actually does is it doesn't inject you with a strain of COVID. It injects the RNA of the coronavirus in general,
well, that's one
and it
of
gives
them.
you
That's
the
not
flu.
all of
No,
them.
that's the
That's just
Pfizer one and whatever. But I
that
do
one's
appreciate. I
the
think that's very clever.
mRNA one, I believe it
Yeah, and
is.
that's very clever.
Yeah, that one sounded alright to me, and we've recently bought another load of doses of that, the country. But yeah, so I think in general I'm for vaccines. My concern with this one is on average it takes usually a minimum of 10 years to develop one. My main concern is the long-term side effects. They still don't. The problem is with the one, the Pfizer one, which the one they've said is 90% effective. No vaccine yet has had any safety information come out yet, so we do not know in any way, shape, or form any effects that these vaccines will have. We only know that it's effective in fighting COVID. That's it. We just don't know anything else. So I'm cautious about that. I don't think if they were to roll it out next year that I would be rushing out to get vaccinated. I'd want to see a lot more on it before I did. So yeah, I think that's sort of where I land on it. But what I find really interesting is how aggressive the discussion gets. I was looking at a lot of stuff online recently about whether people would get vaccinated or not, whether it should be mandatory, whether, like you say, businesses should be allowed to say you can't use our service unless you've been vaccinated. I personally think that's wrong. Um, I don't think what someone does with their body should be forced upon them by the government or any other body whatsoever. I don't know how you feel about that.
Mixed, like I said. On the one hand, I do think, yes, you should be free to choose whether you have the vaccine or not. But on the other hand, I do think companies do have a duty of care, and it's about that freedom. It's the same. I mean, it's not. I appreciate it's not, but it's a much more extreme version of the argument about the masks in a way, in that customers, like, well, I don't have to wear a mask, and shops are quite rightly like, well, I don't have to serve you.
The thing is, like with
So
the
I
mask,
do agree
though,
with getting much
no
more extreme.
business will be in a position to enforce whether you've been vaccinated or not anyway, and they won't have the resources to check or anything like that anyway. Um, so I don't see how it's feasible,
Well,
first of all.
some will, some like anything that requires booking in advance. For example, airline Qantas were one of the first ones to say no vaccine, no fly. But that's like, well, when you at time of booking, you have to provide a certificate of vaccination before you get your ticket, kind of
Okay,
thing.
fair enough. I'm personally not okay with it. I'm not quite sure why I'm not okay with it. I feel like it's infringing on sort of basic human rights, I feel, in terms of a company dictating what someone should be doing with their body. And I know overall vaccine is a positive thing. I think the problem is there's just not enough information at the moment for me.
No,
So, yeah, saying it's 90% effective, I feel, was misleading as well, because we actually don't know how effective it is. They don't even know if it causes an immunity. They just know it
no.
treats.
Although, interesting side note, do you know why bleach bottles and things like that and all those surface cleaners kill 99.9% of germs?
Why?
Because they actually are 100% effective, but no one would believe it. Marketing showed that no one would believe 100% effective
Fair enough.
thing, so they put something very close to it.
Fair play. But I suppose it also leaves them open just in case something else
Yeah,
comes along.
but anyway, that was like a
No,
random.
that's fair enough. What do you think about the fact the government is pre-buying not just the mRNA vaccine, but pretty much everyone that's being produced or tested at the moment, without
I think
knowing whether it's going to work,
it's
it's
very our
successful?
government.
But they're not the only one. Other governments around the world are doing it. I don't know how I feel about it. I think it's more
Yeah.
sensible than some of the spending they have been doing, but not sensible
Oh
at the same.
God, yeah.
Like
Do you
for
know
example,
what I'd love to have? Oh, sorry.
so far we've spent, and this is at time of recording, 230 million on different vaccines so far. I've got a list of the ones we've bought doses of and what stage of clinical trials it's at. So it starts at, we've bought 100 million doses of the University of Oxford / AstraZeneca vaccine, which is at phase 3 clinical trials. We've bought 14 million doses of BioNTech / Pfizer vaccine, which is at stage 3 clinical trials. We've bought 7 million doses of the Moderna vaccine, which is again at stage 3 clinical trials. We bought 60 million doses of the Novavax vaccine, which is at stage 3 clinical trials. 60 million doses of the Valneva vaccine, which is at preclinical trials. 60 million doses of GSK / Sanofi Pasteur vaccine, which is at stage 1. And then finally, 30 million doses of the Janssen vaccine, which is at stage 2 clinical trials.
See, that's shocking because I genuinely thought the only ones we were buying were at stage 3.
No, we've
So
pretty much, if there's a vaccine being developed, we've bought some basically at the moment.
but that's not shocking, though, is it? You look at all the money the government spent. I mean, look at the PPE scandal.
Oh, absolutely.
And the fact
And
that
they
companies
went
are
on
ready
in
to
this.
set up in the UK to make and deliver PPE. And did they go, look, guys, you need to up, we'd like you to up your production? No, they went to companies that one company was set up in May.
Absolutely. Did you hear about the pest control company and what went on with them?
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
To be honest, with that one though, I sort of felt for the government a little bit, but at the same time, due diligence. They bought, I think it was something ridiculous, like £100 million worth of PPE from this company, but never asked, is it going to protect us from COVID? And the company knew what they were buying it for and never said anything. So for me, it's a bit of both. It's whoever bought that's
no,
a fucking idiot,
but at the
but
same
that
time, why
company
would
should
you?
be done.
I mean, as much as I feel a duty of care to the country, if some fucking, sorry, I nearly got really aggressive and lots of use of vanities there. But if some wiggly haired fuckwit like Boris Johnson walks in, or weak little Matt Hancock or Rishi Sunak walk in and go, we've got 100 million here in this suitcase. I'd like to buy all your things. I wouldn't go, actually, to be honest, I know what you want them for. They won't do your job. I'll go, yeah, cheers.
Yeah, I just feel like there's a
I'd
lot
in the
of
pub that
people.
night. Well, I wouldn't because the pubs are closed. Or, I'd walk home at night and go, this drink's on Forest, boy. Drink up.
I just feel like with what's going on, there's so many people that have got their snouts at the trough. Do you know what I mean? That have just like there's money about, so they've just grabbed it. Whether they're in a position like companies, like you say, have started for the sole purpose of getting government contracts, and whether they'll actually fulfil them or not is another question entirely.
Well, this is the thing is, throughout, I mean, in every walk of life, it's always been the old adage, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But when you're dealing with something that is as specific as a viral pandemic, and you really need epidemiologists, virologists, people who are very experienced in these areas, those are the ones where that situation, it shouldn't be about who you know, it should absolutely be about what you know. If what you know
Yeah.
and who you know coincide, great. But in
Now,
specific areas like that, with life and death.
see, what I'm going to say is slightly in defence of the government, which is odd for me, as you know. But
Very.
do you not feel at the time when the public and media pressure to get PPE, because it was widely known we just didn't have enough, was such that the government just went around getting whatever they could? Do you feel that lets them off a little bit, or they still have too much
No,
responsibility?
because there were companies that existed that provided those things. And in the scramble around to get them, surely that's the first place you go. You
Well,
don't go to
I would assume that they did go to the obvious channels, and then those channels have gone, well, look, everyone's asking for it, so they've then gone elsewhere and out of desperation have just bought what they can get their hands on.
from what I can tell, that's not what happened. They went straight to the companies. I mean, there was one company, I saw a chap talking about it, or he's written an article about it, because he looks back on it and is quite ashamed almost of it, like about how easy it was. He knew Matt Hancock,
Yeah,
and apparently he had no experience in PP or whatever, but he felt he could set up a company that could do it, kind of thing.
yeah.
And so apparently he sent Matt Hancock a WhatsApp message and just said, I reckon I can sort you out, kind of thing. And
Like a dodgy Dave down the pub.
yeah, like if you wanted steak, for example, the first thing you do is you go, there's a panic for steak. You go, right, I'm sending people out, go to the butchers, go to all the supermarkets with butcher counters. What you wouldn't do would be like,
Go
right,
down the back
go
alleys,
to the
lads.
shop on the corner, has it? Yeah, let's go that everything shop that sell buckets and spades and spoons and what. Go and see if they've got any. Go and see if hang on, doesn't your mate do a bit of wheeling and dealing? See if he can get us any. If there's a huge panic on, you might say to your friends, guys, I think we can get this cheaper, so go and start looking at it. But the fact is, we need it now, so let's go to the places that have got it now.
So do you?
That's
I
my
mean, to
opinion.
be honest, from the descriptions being made, I would say, if anything, I don't think it's stupidity. I think it's nepotism. I think it's just handouts to
100%.
friends. I mean, we know
100%.
we know for 100% that has happened. But do you think the massive overspending has just been pure nepotism and handouts rather than stupidity?
Yeah. And what do you make of the again, because it does play into the whole, okay, we're in a panic, we need to get things fast. What do you make out of the chap, I think he's Spanish, who got paid the go-between fee? He got paid £40 million as a
What for?
go-between fee
Really?
for arranging for us to get some PPE from a company abroad.
So,
And he got paid £40 million for setting that up.
so there must have
From us.
genuinely been a certain level of desperation in the government to do that sort of thing. Because you don't just pay a random bloke 40 million. I just, it sounds like we handed out money, but also got held to ransom by people.
And obviously that's going to happen, but I just think they handed out money. They didn't even hesitate to hand out money to the wrong people.
No, we just went here. Just whatever you want. Just what it's a bit like. I don't know if you remember him, or no, you will remember him. Odion Igalo, when he was playing for Watford. It was when they first came up and he was playing for him. He was playing really well, and he gets a phone call from his agent. He was like, "Look, there's a Chinese team that wants to sign you," and
Yeah.
and he was like, they're offering 100 grand a week, and at the time I believe he was on 15 grand a week. They'd just come up from the championship, and it was like a 5-year deal, so it's huge money. And his teammates are like, look, I think you should go. Like, that's huge money. You're not going to get that here. Watford offered him 25 grand a week, which obviously isn't anything to be sniffed at. But he was, I don't know, I'm playing well. I want to play in the Prem. So he gets a phone call from the owner of this Chinese team, and he's like, look, I really appreciate you. Before he can finish talking, he's like, 200. And he's like, what do you mean to it? He's like, 200 grand a week. And he's like, no, it's not about it. He's like, 300 grand a week. And he's like, no, honestly, it's not about the money. I want to play in the Premier League. So he rejected him. But it's a bit like that. It's as if we were just like people on the phone going, yeah, 10 million will do, 100 million. Yeah, you know, like even whatever they asked, we overpaid.
There's been no transfer.
Oh no. Right, we're back. Sorry, we had technical difficulties. So yeah, basically our government did a bit of an Oprah. It was like, you can have some money, you can have some money, everyone gets some money.
I think the problem is we're all judging it now because little tidbits are coming out. But I think the truth is, we will never know. There will never be enough transparency for us to know the level of. I have no doubt that there was favouritism and nepotism going on, and we will never know the depth of which that happened and the ease of which that happened.
And to be fair, I don't necessarily begrudge a government doing that. Everyone does it, you know, to get to where you get to. There's backhand deal, there's, you know, handshaking, back scratching, all that sort of stuff. I get that, but it feels like they went, guys, we've got an opportunity here to really fucking get some money out there, and they took it.
That's bad enough in normal times, but in a pandemic, when there are hundreds of people dying each week, it's a literal matter of life and death, and not just people dying, but people who get it and recover having life-changing conditions as a result of it.
Absolutely,
that's not the time you go to your mates or you try and, you know, that's the time where you go to companies that can do it, where you really pay the extra. And if you get held to ransom, you get held to ransom, but you get someone who does it right.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Do you think, though, if the government had come out and gone, look, we can't get hold of it at the moment, we've just got to be patient and weather the storm, do you think people would have been all right with that, though?
Well, I think then the question would have shifted quite understandably, as I'm sure they inevitably will. It's been raised a couple of times tentatively, and I think it will come back to it, of why didn't we have enough? You know, the PPE, because when you look back at the 2016 simulation,
yeah,
one of the biggest things to be flagged up from that is if a virus hits our country, if an epidemic hits our country, we have a huge shortage of personal protective equipment.
Yeah.
That was the big red flag, and people will be going, well, hang on a minute, never mind we can't buy any in, why don't we have it?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think as we know, and to be fair to our government, it's a failing around the world. No one prepared adequately for a pandemic or an epidemic. They just didn't.
No, and and the thing is, you could go back. You know, there's a Bill Gates did I think it might have even been a TED talk, but it's something like that.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Yeah, and he's quite clearly outlines that if the world's going to be undone, it's not going to be by nuclear war. It's not going to be by
a pandemic.
Shop. It'll be a viral pandemic.
Yeah,
because no one's prepared for it. Spend billions and billions of pounds on the army and, you know, getting ready for any physical enemies that attack, and we're starting to spend a bit more on defending ourselves against.
I was about to say, what do you think about the fact we've increased our defence spending to levels we haven't seen for quite a while?
I think it's all. I know this sounds really so left wing and so like hippie and woke, like, but I genuinely believe, and it's my answer to most things, I believe it's in preparation for Brexit. I think once the reality of Brexit sets in, I think they'll realise that. I think that they're preparing for the fact that there might be riots, and I don't mean like necessarily one big full blown riot, but civil unrest. Let's call it not rioting, but civil unrest. And
I just don't know. I feel like that people have to get pushed really, really far for that to happen usually.
Yeah, but think about how our young people take to the streets these days.
True, but I don't know
And
if. I mean, you could be right. I just don't know.
we both know that it's going to have a huge negative impact on this country.
Oh, absolutely, I know it will. But I feel like with Brexit, because it's self-inflicted, I don't know whether as a nation or en masse we'll be able to admit to such a large scale that we were wrong and then rebel because it's of our own doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's not, if that makes sense. Like it is and it isn't. I think the fact is the big thing for Brexit, and I do say this as a Remainer, but I try and look from the perspective of the Brexiteers, the people who voted originally in 2016, a lot of whom necessarily wouldn't vote the same now. I think they were promised a lot of things, and the deal, the oven-ready deal, was honestly a given at that point.
Yeah,
To the
no,
point that
that's
even
fair.
I sort of thought there'll be a deal. I don't think it'll be a good deal, but there'll be a deal. The fact that there now looks like there absolutely won't be a deal, that's not down to them. That's down to,
No,
you
absolutely.
know.
But what I would say though, and I thought about it, people said, this
And
isn't
there I
what
am. Look,
we voted
I'm
for.
defending Brexiteers here.
Well, I mean, what I would say in their defence, but it's another side of the coin, if that makes sense, is that what we voted for was to leave the EU. There was no explanation at the time, really, of how bad it
So
was going
that's
to be
what's
or
on
anything like
paper.
that. But we voted anyway. We voted to jump off a cliff, essentially, not knowing whether there'd be a soft or hard landing. So the fact there's now a hard landing, I think as a nation, the majority of people will just go, well, it's what we voted for. And you see
Well,
that, like when
interestingly,
people
I've
have
seen
it
a poll
explained to them how bad it's going to be, and they go, yeah, but we voted to leave, and that's it.
it's YouGov, and I know polls are polls and they can be whatever, but YouGov, there is now no part of the country, when they break it up into Midlands, West Midlands, London, South East, South West, North West, North West, there is now no part of the country that would vote to leave.
Interesting. Fair enough. I didn't know it had
And this
swung
was
that
about
much.
a month or
I,
so ago.
I wonder though how much of that is because we've had poor leadership post voting rather
100%,
than
100%. And
them not wanting to leave the EU.
the negative effects of leaving the EU needn't have been as severe as they will be if we'd had better leadership. And
Well,
I
the
know
thing
that
is,
I'd still stay,
the thing
but
is,
they
as
wouldn't be
we
as
know,
bad
the
with
best
better.
case scenario leaving the EU was to essentially be in the EU in all but name and have no voting rights. That would have been essentially the best case scenario, to stay as essentially a member but have no voting rights whatsoever, and that would have been it. But now, as it stands, we're going to end up with no deal. And yeah, it's just not going to look good. But I just don't know. I just can't see our country admitting en masse in that sort of violent reaction, to say they were wrong. But I could be wrong.
As well, I think as well the insult as well of the timing of the announcement of the spending of the budget and the spending of the budget and the increase in
It
the
was at the
defence
time.
budget.
I think it was just around the time they said they weren't going to give a pay rise to public sector workers, wasn't it?
Yeah, and about 2 weeks after they'd U-turned on the school meal, so 3 weeks previous to that, they were saying there's not enough money to feed the kids. There is enough money to give billions of pounds to the army, but there's no money to feed your kids.
No, absolutely. So yeah, no, yeah. So Brexit.
Well, Brexit. Well, I was going to say the one thing that maybe we should discuss is Christmas this year
Okay.
and the 5 day break.
Oh, do you know what? I'm gonna sound really bad. I probably would have still seen my family at some point over the Christmas period, whether I had been given
And
permission or not. Mainly
part of what
because
they're
my
doing is they
mum's
know
a
people.
widower who lives on her own, and I wouldn't have wanted her to spend Christmas Day on her own. And that would have been my main motivation. Um, I think, if anything, the reason we've done the Christmas break and we've been given 5 days is basically to save the government's face, because they know as well as we do, people will do what they want at Christmas regardless of what the government has said.
Yeah, I think the one thing that pleased me was wasn't expecting it was on shows like This Morning and Loose Women. they've been running polls about, do you think it's a good idea? And I honestly expected the kind of people to watch those shows to vote yes.
Mm.
Actually, the majority of all those polls that were run by those kind of daytime programs and whatever, all of them came back with the majority of people saying, no, it's not a good idea.
No, and to be honest, I would agree with them. I think my opinion would change about seeing my mum if I knew she had a serious health condition or if she was at risk. Or
Well, that's the thing as well. So, in terms of expanding, so actually they're not giving us that much, and I think people are going to really take liberties with it. But so currently you can have a bubble with one other household, right?
no,
Or
it's
you can
3
expand.
households, maximum 12
No,
people.
right. Not saying at the moment, as
Oh
in
yeah, sorry. So yeah, you can have a
you can have one
support
other
bubble
household.
with one other
No, you can
household.
have two households. You can add one household to your thing, and actually they've already said that no over, I think it's 65s or whatever, but no over 65s in the bubble.
Yeah.
Because, not in your bubble in general, but because they're vulnerable and
Yeah.
they're the ones. And it's like, well, hang on, the whole point is to get Nan and Grandad around for Christmas, generally speaking.
Well, yeah, exactly.
And they're not going to be able to come in.
I think what I would say to people in general is do what you think is right for your family. If you've got people that are at risk in your family and you don't know what to do, I would say err on the side of caution and don't see each other. I know it sucks. I know it's horrible, but ultimately, yeah, all right. It could be your nan or granddad's last Christmas if you see them. You know, that's the fundamental way to look at it. Particularly if your at-risk family members have already been shielding for the majority of this year and have suffered already. To be honest with you, a bit more suffering to make sure they make it through this is worth it, in my
And that's
opinion.
part of the thing as well for me is we've written off pretty much all of this year. Why make a stand now?
Yeah.
Because it's Christmas, make a big deal out. But why make a stand now? Look, it's a little matter of life and death, man. That's what it comes down to, in my opinion.
Mm.
And again, it's not about getting it. It's about you getting it and then inadvertently passing it on to someone.
Yeah. I think fundamentally, if you feel you can look others and your family members in the eye and say you feel you're doing the right thing and you honestly mean that, then, you know, do what you think is best. I'm in no position morally or intellectually to tell people what's right and wrong. And I don't think a blanket way of dealing with it is the best way to deal with it in all circumstances. Like I said, I think with the Christmas break, base it off of your own individual family and that your own health conditions and your own situations, and don't be influenced by others in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, look, as you said, people are going to do what they're going to do, but I would personally advise as having as small a Christmas as possible. I know
Yeah, I think
that's
that's
sucked
fair.
for a lot of people, but all of this year has sucked for a lot of people. And think about the people. That's what I'm doing, is thinking about the people who have been suffering with their mental health and suffering financially, and the small businesses. If we have to restrict them even further, it's not worth it.
No, no,
It's not worth it. If you ask them, would you rather have a week now, but you have to give up 3 weeks or a month later down the line in February? Well, they wouldn't.
no, no, they wouldn't. So now I think we've discussed the majority of what I was hoping to discuss. To be fair.
Yeah, and there's enough going on. I should say as well that with the lockdown, just a quick mention that the at point of recording, they're voting on the new tier system that's
Yeah.
going to be introduced. Interesting. Labour are going to abstain from the vote,
Why is that?
and did you know what? I don't know,
Because it
but
doesn't
I'd be
really
very
make
curious.
sense.
But a lot of the backbenchers on the Conservative side are going to vote against the new tier system,
Yeah, I did see that.
but they will still win. It'll be a big shock, basically, if this goes out. Although, to be honest, knowing my luck, we're saying things on the pod when we record them, and then them doing the
Yeah,
complete
Boris
opposite.
loses.
He probably has lost it. So, there you go. What we do without the tiers? Who knows?
Yeah.
The fact is, the tier system is heavily against areas that are, I don't know, they're heavily against the north,
Yeah.
regardless of
What's
infection
the
rate, because
problem
there are
with the
areas in the
north?
south that are there are areas in the south that are just as high infection rates that are not getting put into the same tiers, or that
Yeah, it doesn't
weren't.
quite. It's, yeah, it doesn't make any logical sense to me. It sort of screams of, oh, they're all dirty and disgusting up there.
Well, their only culture is football, unlike us with our ballet and our operas.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we do go all the time. Do go all the
I've missed
time.
it. I've missed the ballet.
Well, saying that, I did actually sit and watch a Zoom webinar with the Dame Dench, Dame Maggie Smith, Sir
Yeah,
Ian McKellen. Who else was on it? Sir Kenneth
Derek
Branagh,
Jacobi from
and yes, Derek Jacobi.
nice.
No, that was quite interesting. It was a bit, to be honest with you, they were taking questions from the audience, and all of the questions were shit. To be honest, none of them were any good, but
What
they
were
were all.
you wanting?
Uh,
What questions were you wanting?
I don't know, but not what's your favourite sandwich?
That's a bit shit.
Yeah, yeah,
Shit. That's crap.
yeah. There was only one really good question, which was to Sir Ian McKellen, which was, what was your favourite character that you've played?
Well, surely you want to be like you've all been in the game for a long time, top level. Most of you have done the RSC. Most of you have done all kinds of things, right? Have you ever shagged each other?
Well, Ian McKellen basically said how he really fancied Jacoby when he first met him in his tight trousers.
Nice. I love that. I do know what that's a great panel.
It was really good.
And
I was like, what have I seen that Derek Jack? And then, like, the amount of stuff that man's been in, and I was like, fuck.
yeah, no, he's a good actor and he gets around.
Hmm.
He was a fantastic in Doctor Who, even.
Yeah, although I had to keep Leanne awake through the whole thing. She just kept falling asleep.
But I'm going to make a suggestion as we round this off.
Yep.
Obviously, we both need to sign off on an official crossing swords stance or proposal.
Yes.
My idea is that I would happily have those 5 in charge of the country.
Especially Sir Ian McKellen. I fucking love that man.
And I'll tell you now, can you imagine? I know I'm thinking of her more as Professor McGonagall, but can you imagine Maggie Smith going into Claude Juncker's, going into Brussels and demanding a deal?
She, I've got to be honest, she does come across like a bit of a stern so-and-so. Do you
That'd be
know what I
great.
mean?
That'd be great.
Yeah. And I just love the Dent. She seems like she's game for a laugh.
Yeah, me too. No, all of them. I'm like, actually, do you know what? No, ignore that thought.
Were you
Because
going
a
to
lot of
mug
them
off
were.
Brano?
No, I was just thinking how many of them were in Harry Potter, but actually I think it was only the 2 of them.
Yeah.
So ignore that.
Who were the 2? Dame Maggie.
And Kenneth Branagh.
Who was
He
Kenneth?
played Gilderoy Lockhart.
Oh, of course he did. Yeah. I just couldn't place him at first. Fair enough. Yeah, fair.
There you go. And yeah, no, I think happily have them in charge. I think the overall thing is the real disappointment that we're not learning from our mistakes.
No, absolutely. And what I've found really difficult recently, there's not a subject you can have a discussion with people about that doesn't turn aggressive and polarizing. And we're just in an age at the moment where you can't have an opinion without falling out with someone. And I find that
I
quite
know I remember
challenging.
saying, I know, again, it all comes back to Brexit with me. That should be like, I should have it on a t-shirt or something. But I remember saying in 2016, after the day after the vote, I remember this is going to split the country beyond repair.
Yeah.
Because it is, and it's exactly what's happening in that you can't have civil conversations anymore. It turns
No, you
dirty.
can't.
It turns you kick people out of your life based on their political view. I'm not saying you or I or any of our
No,
listeners,
but
but people
people have. People have.
are cutting people out. Whereas 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that wasn't happening. You might
No,
get an eating
not
sometimes.
to the degree
That
it
wasn't
has, I don't
happening.
think. No.
You weren't you weren't ostracising family members based on the way they voted.
I think perhaps it's probably in the as social consciousness, I think, has improved and our alertness to it is far more heightened. I feel like as a society in general, we're far more on edge. And if someone says anything that we perceive in ourselves as offensive, we just jump on it immediately. And I think that leaves and again, we're in an age where fact doesn't matter, opinion seems to matter more. And I think you sort of throw the two together, you get a really dangerous combination.
I think now as well, we're looking at the damage when we look, in the immediate aftermath of the Brexit vote, and we were talking about how we were told to ignore experts, and we were told to ignore advice from people in the know, and thinking at the time, that's dangerous. And I was only thinking of that in the immediate effect of Brexit, but I think now we're witnessing the true damage of that, and that is the lasting legacy and the lasting damage of this government. And Boris, that's what they've done. They built themselves on ignore the experts, and then in their hour of need, when it's all gone to shit, they needed to tell us, listen to the experts.
Yeah, but the thing is, even with that, they've still not learned their mistakes in terms of we're not listening to the experts quick enough. Even the government, that like with the circuit breaker, with this lockdown, we should have been in it. We should have been out of it by now. It should have already been and gone.
We will be by the time this airs. We will be.
Yeah. But in terms of,
fair, when we're at point of recording, we're right on the edge of it ending. We're not recording this somewhere in the middle. Right?
But my point is, like, we should have been like Wales, already out of it. But instead, we were a month, 2 months behind everyone else.
And the worrying thing is when the experts present their numbers and they say this is the estimated number of lives that would not have died had we gone in earlier.
Just one last question. What do you think about people that say that coronavirus is a hoax, that none of these people have died of coronavirus? And like, where does someone even get that mindset from that they can... Like, I sort of get the inflated or the figures aren't quite right. Because, for example, like even on slides from the government, it says, deaths within 28 days of a coronavirus positive test. So, like, you could die of a brain aneurysm after getting COVID. You could be on the 28th day and they'll put it as COVID.
We spoke about it before. It was happening that people, just to get the paperwork through and whatever, people were putting down COVID as one of the reasons and possible reasons. And it was like, well, got hit by a bus. It was hardly the flu that killed him, was it? But that has been happening. I do accept that, but I think.
But to get from that to it's not real, I can't quite.
I look at the doctors and the nurses in the ICU units and in hospitals in general
that are on the edge of breaking point.
I look at their reaction every time they see someone say it's not real. And that's enough to fuel my emotions towards it.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. I completely agree with you. I mean, as you know, I'm someone who likes the odd conspiracy theory, but when it comes to something like this, it defies belief that someone can believe that,
and I'll tell you now, we've
done it's real.
2 episodes so far on conspiracy theories. We did one specifically on 9/11, and we did one where we both picked a couple of conspiracy theories, and they're great episodes, by the way. The 9/11 episode was one of my favourites because we actually clashed, and I just remember that moment where you were getting so wound up by my defending of something, and I was almost playing devil's advocate, and you getting so wound up, and you looked over at me, and what really blew you over the top was the fact that I was standing there with this big grin on my face.
Yeah, because you were loving every second.
This is so good. This is going to make it such a good episode. And you were like, how the fuck are you smiling? While I'm
yeah. No, that's a brilliant episode.
I'll tell you what's not going to
make it. The thing is, when I've listened to it back, I get just as angry reliving it.
I smiled just as much.
I know it's a good episode, but I still get angry when I listen to it because I'm like, I can picture your face every time.
I'll tell you what's not going to make it onto our next one, onto our threequel of that
What's that?
particular subject. Coronavirus.
No, it won't. No, it won't.
Neither of us believe it's a conspiracy. Neither of us believe it's a hoax.
No. No.
And that, you know, yeah, not going to happen.
No. So I think on that note, guys, let us know your thoughts, how you feel about the situation, whether you'd get the vaccine or not, and you can do that
Oh, you
here.
son of a bitch! I was just about to set it up. Just about to set it up.
You can do that here at Swords Crossing on Twitter, Crossing Swords on Facebook, at Crossing Swords _podcast on Insta, and then you can email us at crossingswords19@gmail.com. So guys, get on it. You can also find us on YouTube. We are on the tube of you. Please subscribe, please watch, share everything, you know, just love us and everything we do.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Takes 2 seconds to click retweet or to click share a Facebook post, and it makes a huge difference to us. So we don't like tagging. We do a lot of it, but we don't like it. Please,
we don't want to have to go back to giving out sexual favours.
I'm still not caught up. There's a lot of people I still haven't wanked off yet.
Jake keeps getting lockjaw. It's not fair on him.
This is why I'm smiling so much. This is the only position that's comfortable for my mouth now. Yes, me.
So guys, save Jake and his precious jaw a lot of work.
Someone should give more damage than others, I won't lie.
Yeah, well, you'd expect that.
You know who.
And on that note, we will see you next time. Thank you very much, guys, and take care and stay safe.
Take care.
Bye.